Welcome to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry. In every episode, we explore how people from educators and artists to executives and entrepreneurs lead with authenticity, rise through adversity, and share the wisdom they've gained along the way. Today's guest, Ron Jenkins, has lived a life of incredible resilience, service, and transformation. From surviving the foster care system and the devastating loss of loved ones, to excelling as one of the top wide receivers at Fresno State, to becoming a mentor, coach, and advocate, Ron brings both heart and grit to everything he does. Ron is currently an assistant football coach at Los Angeles Southwest College. He's also been a counselor, youth corrections officer, and trusted guide to countless young people. But at his core, he's someone who believes deeply in second chances and the power of human connection. Ron, welcome to Expressions of Leadership. We're honored to have you here.
Thank you, Michele. It's an honor to be a part of Expressions of Leadership. It's an exciting day for me. I'm looking forward to sharing my story, and hopefully it makes it into the hearts and minds of someone that it could be of help to.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. You lost your mother at just 2 years old and experienced so much instability growing up in the foster system. How do you look back on those early years now?
Well, when you're that young, you don't understand, what you're going through. You don't understand the challenges, that are for you emotionally, physically, even in my case, environmental. You don't even understand, those situations. Looking back on it now, I actually get kind of afraid, more so than back then, because as a child, you're just living through whatever situation you're in. Um, it was tough. It was a real tough situation, not only because I had lost my mom, but because when I was adopted, I was adopted into a situation that was supposed to be supportive, a situation that was supposed to facilitate a life, that led to positivity. Unfortunately, the lady who adopted us, well, she adopted me, my brothers, and other kids. Her idea was to adopt young kids and get the monies from the government and take those monies and buy drugs to sell drugs. So that situation, unfortunately, was not good. As a result of that, I had four brothers killed before I was 23 years old, and they were all directly or indirectly related to some type of drug situation. Um, so, looking back on that, I'm just thankful that, I was able to overcome those obstacles, unlike my brothers. But at the same time, I took those situations and used them as motivation, in terms of me going forward. I remember when my brother was 15 and I was probably 11, and the police came in our house at 1 o'clock in the morning and handcuffed him and took him away, and I didn't see him till 5 years later. That was a reminder that I didn't want that to happen to me. So yes, these situations were negative, but luckily, I had a good heart and a good soul that, I didn't want those things to become of me.
And there were also moments of kindness in your life that left a lasting mark, like the time when you were playing in an abandoned parking lot, and that led to an unexpected invitation. Can you take us back to that moment?
Yes, again, I was probably 10 or 11, and there was an abandoned parking lot behind my foster home. And I would jump my fence and go over there and play. Um, and just sort of, be in no man's land and just trying to occupy time. And there was a Hispanic family that lived on the other side of another gate. And the father would see me out there playing by myself. And then one day he called me to the gate and he asked me, did I want to come in and play with his three children? And I said yes, of course. It'd be playing alone. So we walked to the front. He let me in the gate and introduced me to his children. And he said, these are my kids. You can play over here as long as you follow the rules, as long as you be good, you can play. And I began going over there several times a week and playing with Maria, Ernesto, and Juan. They were good kids who had just come to California from Mexico. So there was a little bit of a language barrier there. But, kids playing, there's not very much conversation. So all you're doing is playing. And we were playing kickball, volleyball, tattleball, whatever, just to occupy the time. And after going over there a few times, the dad, who we only known as Grandpa, um, he asked me, did I want to have dinner with his family? And I said yes. And he said, okay, again, you have to follow all the rules. Just look at the things that my kids do. You go in, you wash your hands, you sit on at the table, you don't speak, you say your prayers, you eat, and you have a good time. And so we went in and I washed my hands, sat down at the table, and we said our prayers. And the mom, served us whatever she was cooking and with fresh hot tortillas. And that was the first time that I had ever experienced sitting down at a dinner table and having dinner with in a family setting. And it proved to be pivotal in terms of me understanding, what family was about and what families did, and it's a situation that I today think back on, and I'm really grateful that I was able to be in that situation, but more grateful that Grandpa and his family was able to embrace me because they knew nothing about me. They knew nothing about my situation. They didn't know that I was a foster kid. They didn't know that I had lost my mom. They didn't know any of these things. But yet, they were gracious enough to invite me into their home and show me something that I had never seen.
And what did that mean to you?
It meant a great deal to me. It meant that they trusted me. It meant that I was good. I was a good enough person to be chosen to be in this situation. Which gave me a little confidence about who I was, and it just taught me that there are good people everywhere. And it doesn't matter where you're at or who you are. There are good people in this world. And I'll say this: years later, I end up going to East LA College, which is a predominantly Hispanic, population, Latino population. And in being on that campus, I had already had this impression of what that population offered, in terms of people, because I had this experience as a 10-year-old kid with this Hispanic family invite me in and showing me love. So when I got to East LA on campus, I didn't have no prejudices. I didn't have, no assumptions about, how I was going to be treated. And it proved to be the same. That campus embraced me just like this family embraced me. So it gave me a sense of understanding that the world can be a good place.
Now, age 13 was a turning point for you when something pivotal happened that began to shift the direction in your life. It involved an incident, a moment of reckoning, and someone who chose to believe in you. Can you tell us what happened and why that moment mattered so much?
Yes. When I was 13, I was hanging out with some kids, and we were in between being good kids and being bad kids. We grew up in South LA, so the gang element was definitely there. And some of the friends that I chose, they were, choosing this way of life, gang style, and I lived in that neighborhood, so I hung out with them. So sometimes we got into situations, that wasn't kosher. And one day we were handling a BB gun in my backyard, and one guy decided that he wanted to shoot the BB gun across the street, and he ended up shooting out a front window of a gentleman who lived across the street from me. At the end of the day, the gentleman came to my house, and his wife had told him that, we were in my backyard and we shot out the window. She didn't come over there and say anything to us because she feared that we would retaliate against her. Or her husband comes to my house and he knocks on the door, and he tells my foster mom that that your son, me, talking about me, I had to pay for a window that I had shot out. I came to the door and I was like, I didn't shoot your window out. And he goes, well, you were with the boys who shot it out, so that makes you responsible. And he said, I'm not going to call the police, but you're going to pay to have this window repaired. His reasons for not calling the police because he understood that in that community, police was being called often, and the results of that was young men were coming in contact with the police, and in some cases they were, going to jail or being involved in things that they weren't quite ready for. And he didn't want me to deal with that situation, so he chose to take it upon himself to deal with it. Therefore, he told me I would, meet him at his house that Saturday morning to work off the debt. He was a contractor. So I meet him that Saturday morning, and we go out on this job. He's remodeling a bathroom. And we get to the job site, and he says, I need this wall broke out, and I need that wall broke out. I'm going to go get supplies, and I'll be back shortly. He leaves, and he leaves me there with a sledgehammer. And well, I took the sledgehammer and the crowbar. I went to work, and I knocked the walls down. And when he came back, the wood was stacked up to the side, and I was just sitting there. And he was impressed with that. And we began a working relationship. I came back with him the next week, and I came back with him the next week. And then the lady who lived there, she came out to where we were working, and she said, Mr. Burnett, um, I know you have children. This young man right here looks like you, but he's not your son because I know your son. And without hesitation, Mr. Burnett said, yes, this is my son. And I don't know if Mr. Burnett knew or not that I didn't have a father in my life, but the minute he said that, not only did I gain a mentor, a father, and somebody who I looked up to, but it just changed the trajectory of my life because instead of spending time at my house where there was a lot of negativity going on, I would get out of school and I would go to Mr. Burnett's house. And his wife began to tutor me in school. His daughter became my little sister. So it was sort of a surrogate family that I inherited based on this negative situation. But it was Mr. Burnett's um, thought process that he knew that I was probably a young kid who needed something more than what I was given. And he chose to step out and be a leader in our community that day. And it's made such a big difference in my life. Um, and at a very pivotal time. I mean, I was 13 years old, and I was in between choosing these guys as friends and doing the BB gun gang membership thing, or having somebody come in my life and say, "Hey, there's a different way," and that's what Mr. Burnett did. He showed me that there was a different way to do things, and again, he embraced me, but I think the most important part of this is that I embraced him as well. Because usually, when you're a young kid and you've been exposed to situations where your trust is low, you don't value people because you've been treated horrible. My foster care home situation was very bad. There was a lot of abuses taking place in that household. And on that abuse level, you can go from A to Z that I've experienced. And, when you're in those situations, you don't trust. But I was different in that I trusted Mr. Burnett, that he embraced me and I embraced him back. And I think that was probably the most pivotal thing, was that I made a conscious decision to believe in, what he was telling me as opposed to what was going on with my friends and things like that.
What an incredible gift for both of you.
Yes, yes, exactly. I agree. And it was a relationship that was built on respect, love, kindness, understanding, and yes, I'm so glad that he took the stance that he took in that situation.
Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Ron shares how football and mentorship from coaches Chuck Hollis and Steve Mushagian began changing everything. Stay tuned. We'd love for you to be a part of the Expressions of Leadership community. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at Expressions of Leadership. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and our guest is Ron Jenkins, a man who turned pain into purpose and now gives back every day. Let's dive deeper. How did football come into your life from there? And when did you first start to see it as a path to something bigger?
Well, sport wasn't something that I was introduced to through my foster home. It was kind of one of those things that I learned by having friendships in the community. When I got to high school, I befriended a gentleman by the name of Myron Ashley, and we became very good friends. We hung out a lot, and when football came around in the summer, he played. He had been playing since he was a little child, and he was now going to play in high school. And through hanging out with him, I was introduced to the game. And in order to hang out with him, and he was going to be at football practice, I had to go. So I went out for the team, and I wasn't very good because I hadn't played the sport before. He was a very good athlete, and I basically followed his path. He had known a long time that he wanted football to be his path to college, to success. So I was basically following his path. And um, like I said, in the beginning, I wasn't very good. My second year, I ended up playing freshman ball 2 years in a row because I was behind that much. And then I eventually end up moving up to varsity. But in those 3 years, I improved, but not in, I didn't improve enough to become first string or the number one player. But in the process of that, my second year, Coach Hollis showed up at Manuar's High School, and he was a new coach. So he had no knowledge of who I was. He had no knowledge of the conversation about me, which proved pivotal. And so we were out in the summer and we were throwing the football around, and he saw me throw the football and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, you're going to be my quarterback next year." And I looked behind me like, "Are you talking to me?" He said, "Yeah, you're going to be my quarterback next year." And I mean, I knew I had a good arm because, everybody would say it, but internally, I didn't see myself as a quarterback. I didn't even see myself as a football player. I was just doing it, to take up time and to be around, my good friend. And so the summer come rolls around, and yes, I'm his quarterback, and he puts me into this leadership role that I have no idea about. here I am, this shy, insecure kid, based on all the experiences that I've had, in with my foster family and the losses that I've experienced, brothers being killed and, just seeing a whole bunch of things that didn't give me the confidence that I needed to step into that role. Coach Hollis gave me that confidence by allowing me, to be his quarterback and just kind of coaching me and mentoring me and, showing me and teaching me, how to work that position from a schematic standpoint. And then when you're successful in that, and then the kids started to look towards you, one day you look up and you just realize to yourself, hey, I'm the leader of this team, and then you gain enough confidence to start, engaging in a leadership role as the quarterback of the football team. And I credit Coach Hollis, for putting me in that situation, not even knowing that that was something that I desperately needed, to uh, complete or continue this growth period, in terms of who I would be as a person.
And what did you learn about leadership and character while you were in that new role as the quarterback?
Well, I think the first thing is I was a quiet leader. I wasn't a very vocal guy. Now, on the other hand, Coach Hollis, he was this big spectacle of a man and he was very boisterous and very authoritative. He had a military background. He had a no nonsense kind of approach to football, but yet we also know that he cared about our future because he talked about our future and he told us, the lessons that you're going to learn today are going to be lessons that you'll live, throughout your life forever. Things like never giving up, things like fighting through tough times, fighting through adversity. He talked about those things. In terms of me personally, I think my football skill kind of led who I was in terms of being a leader. I was always on time. I listened to the coach. I did things exactly the way they were. I didn't mouth off. I didn't talk back. I was there to learn how to be a better football player, and thus that experience allowed me to also be a better person because when you're the quarterback, people look to you for direction. And you may not be used to that in the beginning, but we all learn through conditioning and response. So I had to step up in this leadership role without having any experience. And it proved that football, was a way for me to kind of sneak in there as a leader, instead of just showing up as one.
Now, you continued to play football post high school, and you met another key mentor in your life, Coach Steve Mushakian. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, so I finished my high school career, and then I went on to play junior college football. A friend of mine that was on my high school team, Ted Green, was going to play at ELAC College, and they had a limited amount of receivers. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come over here and play at East LA?" Um, I think I was working this little job at a liquor store, and so I quit the job and I went over to East LA and became a starter at wide receiver for 2 years. And in my second year, I was being recruited by colleges because I had made it up the ranks in terms of what receivers do in terms of their production as a junior college receiver. I made it up the ranks. So therefore, I was being recruited by Fresno State, Oregon State, Memphis State, and some other schools. I ended up choosing Fresno State because Coach Michigan, who came to South LA and he visited my home. No other coach had done that. All the other coaches were recruiting me by bringing me to their facilities. Coach Michigan actually showed up at my house in South LA to recruit me. And I thought that was really big. That was huge that he would come to that specific area. It was a tough area to be in for us. And then here this Armenian guy showing up, at my house in the middle of South LA. He took a chance, and we ended up, creating a friendship, a bond, but always kept that respect as him being my coach. He wasn't very much older than me. I think I was probably in my early 20s and he was in his late 20s. So there was a commonality there as well. But the thing that I liked about Coach Mishagan is that he told me that he would be there for me, as a coach and as a person, and that's exactly what he did. When I got to Fresno State, they had two great wide receivers that I was playing behind. Both of them ended up making it to the NFL. And then my senior year, the year that I was going to be, um, the number one guy, I went in for my summer evaluation with Coach Sweeney, and he didn't feel like I had done the things necessary to be a starter going into my senior year. And he told me, but you're going to be here and you're going to earn your scholarship by playing on all of our special teams and, earning, your education. And I left out of that meeting heartbroken, because I felt like I did a good job, but the job that I thought I did wasn't, what he thought. And he was the head coach, so I had to meet his standards. So in coming out of that meeting, I met with Coach Mishagan, who believed in me and who felt like I had the talent, to be a starter, but there were some things that I needed to do. Um, Coach Mishagan supported me in that situation. He said, "Look, don't worry about what he told you. You have an opportunity to change some of those things that are not right." And so I left Coach Mishagan and I went to the track coach. I went to the weightlifting coach and I said, "Hey, I need to get faster. I need to get stronger. I need to get quicker. What are some of the things that I can do?" The track coach gave me a workout. The weightlifting coach, Coach Roberto Parker, explained to me that, it wasn't so much getting faster, it was being fast in the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. He said that's what you want your goal to be. And so I kind of took those instruction and created this workout and got faster, got stronger, and went into my senior season as the number one receiver, something that Coach Sweeney told me that wouldn't happen. But you know what? I'll be honest with you. Football was more of a release for me from dealing with all the things that I had dealt with as a child. Now, at that time, I didn't know it, but now at this age, looking back on it, football was my therapy. It was a way for me to escape the death of my brothers, to escape the death of my nephew, to escape the abusive situations that I had been exposed to. And that's why I was so committed to it because it was a mental outlet from dealing with the pain and the pressures of my past. And I overcame, you know, and ended up being the number four receiver in the nation, and got some looks, with Canada, and didn't really pursue NFL career because I never thought I was that kind of player. This was more of a situation where I was surviving and I was doing something that I love. And I knew the educational aspects of it would be important. So I was probably more focused on the education part of it than I was going on and playing professionally. I finished up my degree, and that was the end of my football career, but it wasn't the end of life for me because I understood that I had a purpose and I wanted to work with kids. I majored in social work, got my degree, did an internship my senior year with Fresno County Probation Department. And then after graduating, I was hired back at Fresno State as a graduate assistant coach. So I coached 1 year and then I was hired by Fresno County Juvenile Hall as a counselor.
We're going to take another short break. And when we return, Ron shares how mentoring others showed him the ripple effect of care. Stay with us. Want to support powerful conversations on leadership and success? Expressions of Leadership is looking for sponsors who believe in the power of great storytelling. Let's team up. Email us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com to learn more. You're listening to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and we're joined by special guest Ron Jenkins. Together, we're exploring how leadership can change lives through courage, healing, and connection. At Fresno County Juvenile Hall, when you were a counselor, you met Carissa Phelps, a 13-year-old survivor of human trafficking. And she said you asked questions that no one else did and helped her begin believing in herself. How did that connection begin?
Yes, I was working Fresno County Juvenile Hall. I became a senior counselor on that unit, and where I was responsible for supervision of other counselors. And they had a pilot program that dealt with young girls. There were no treatment programs in Fresno County Juvenile Hall at this time for young girls. So they put in place this pilot program, and what that did, what is it allowed young girls to receive therapeutic counseling. And there was 3 girls that was chosen to participate in this program, and they were to come to the boys unit from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening so they could receive therapeutic services. One of the young girls was assigned to my caseload. Her name was Carissa Phelps. And this was unique in that because I was the senior counselor, I had the autonomy of um, getting to know the young men and women that I work with, a little better than, just being a floor counselor who had many other responsibilities. So, with the alertness of bringing these young girls, down to our unit, I had Carissa spend time with me during dinner. She would bring her dinner and we would meet and we would talk about, the things that she had been through and why she had, come to juvenile hall. And in that discovery, it was learned that she had been exposed to human trafficking. She ran away from home because her stepfather was starting to abuse the girls in the family, and she ran away and met a young woman out on the street who told her that they were going to be friends and that things was going to be all right. And Carissa believed in that, and the next thing she knew, she was being introduced to human trafficking through fear and drugs, and um, she became a part of that life. And then when she got locked up, um, I became her counselor and understood, the things that she was going through, and um, really was able to identify with her based on situations and things that I had gone through. The conversations that we had were a little too tough for me, and so I had her to begin writing journals. So in her journals, she would tell me all the things that she'd experienced out on the street, whether it was eating out of trash cans or being exposed to human trafficking and, the decisions that she made while she was out there. And basically, my role was to talk her through these things and get her to understand what she was responsible for and what she wasn't responsible for and make sense of um, where she was now and what we could do to move forward. And one of the things that I noticed about her in terms of turning in her journals was that her writing skills were unbelievable. I mean, I told her, this 13-year-old girl, I said, you know what, you write better than most of the staff here. And I said, this is going to be your survival skill, education. You're a smart young girl, And if you stick to this part of your plan, your life plan, you're gonna be fine. And I'll just jump to another situation. One day she got kicked out of school and she came back to the living unit. This was probably her second time, and I was upset. And I was like, "What's going on? Why are you back in the living unit?" She goes, "Well, I'm not gonna stay in that dumb school." And I was like, "Okay, come on." I took her to school and I asked the teacher what was the problem, and the teacher said, "Well, she's just sitting here. She won't do her work." And I was frustrated, and I started thinking back, and I was like, "Okay, well, what did they do when I was in school?" So I remember they did the test. They would always test you to see where you were. So I asked the teacher, I said, "Okay, well, can you please test her and let's kind of see where she is and then moving forward?" And she said, "Okay." So the teacher ended up testing her and she blew the test out of the water. There wasn't a algebra book there wasn't a math book in the institution that we could give her that would excite her. So basically, the teacher had to bring math books from home because Carissa was too smart for what they were teaching in juvenile hall. And she blew the test out of the water, and the next thing you know, she's doing geometry, calculus, and all this kind of thing. So, and then me learning, I was like, wow, this girl is really smart. So I went to my supervisor and said, "Hey, look at, we need to pay attention to this situation. This young girl, her education is strong, and what can we do to help her?" And we got her involved in self-esteem camp. She was one of the first persons to ever leave that institution, go outside, and she participated in self-esteem camp, and it was beneficial for her. Um, I stuck close to her in terms of continuing to meet with her and talk about the things that she had been through. And then I left to promote to the state, and I got a call. Um, Probably some 6 or 7 years later, and there was Carissa on the other line, and she said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And I said, "How could I forget about you? Of course I remember you. I've thought about you every day." And she says, um, "Well, I just want you to know that I graduated from Fresno State, summa cum laude in math, and I want you to come to my graduation." And here I am thinking she was calling me from prison, and she's calling me to tell me that she's graduating from Fresno State, summa cum laude in math. From there, she goes on to graduate from UCLA Business Law School, and I was right there to celebrate with her. And since that day, we've been inseparable. She's like my daughter. She calls me dad, and I hang out with her and her husband. And she's gone on to do amazing things. She graduated from UCLA. She went into public equity. That wasn't sitting right for her because she knew in her heart that there were girls out on the street that needed help. She created a program called Runaway Girl, who help survivors get off their feet and get back into the mainstream of society. She did that, and now she's an attorney in Florida, working in that same field, trying to make a difference there.
And how does
Yes.
that feel to witness what she's become?
Oh my God. I kind of set out to avenge the death of my four brothers. And her story is definitely falls into that category of me, going out and instead of taking lives, because usually, when you live in those environments and things like that happen, they expect you to get revenge. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to avenge my brother's deaths and go out and help young kids, make decisions in their lives that they end up like a Carissa, that they end up like a Monica or Sarah. These are other young girls, that I've come in contact with, that are doing well now that had struggling situations. Um, and it makes me feel like, I've given back to a community that needed it, really. Um, I'm always conscious of who I was as a little kid and the things that I needed. And I'm just trying to give those things out, to kids who were like me, who needed someone to recognize them like Mr. Burnett recognized me. So that's where this starts. It starts with Mr. Burnett and him doing the things that he did for me at a pivotal time, and then me going into Carissa's life at a pivotal time, and then, her creating her organization to where she's helped, young girls all around the world. And it's a good feeling.
We'll pause here for a moment, and when we come back, we'll dive into Ron's journey beyond the field and law enforcement into healing from past trauma. Stick with us. Leadership isn't just about strategy, it's about people. The Forward Project helps organizations cultivate strong, adaptable leaders who create thriving workplace cultures. If you're ready to invest in your leadership team, visit www.theforwardproject.co to learn how. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and we're here with our special guest, Ron Jenkins. And so far, we've heard about the early challenges and also victories that shaped his young life. So now we're going to turn to some of the harder truths that followed. You've said football and law enforcement gave you a sense of identity and community, but also allowed you to avoid confronting deep pain. What happened when those roles ultimately shifted or fell away?
Yes, law enforcement and sport gave me an identity that I had no idea was in place. Basically, um, my childhood was full of situations that took a lot out of me. Um, Having four brothers killed, growing up in an abusive foster home, all those things were inside of me, but they were overshadowed by my early sport career, playing high school football, then going on to play junior college football, and then going on to playing D1 college football at Fresno State. Um, those were things that covered up the pain and the hurt that I felt as a child, the abandonment that I felt as a child, the losses that I experienced as a child was all covered up by my athletic experience. And then when I graduated college, and I went right into working for Fresno County Probation Department and then transferring to the state of California and becoming a correctional officer and a counselor. Those things sort of took the forefront, in my life because I was passionate about working with youth. I was passionate about working with people, and I was passionate about making a difference in our community. And when I retired after 32 years, here I am, this 50-year-old man in a world now stripped of everything that held him up. And I fell into a state of depression probably about 6 months after I retired. And there was an article written on me by Fresno State, and it talked about my life and my life experiences. It talked about the losses that I had. And I read this article, and for the first time, I was able to see myself and see the things that I had went through. And it gave me an understanding that I needed help. Um, I had been married before and I was divorced. So that kind of played in there too. I was like, wow, you know what? Maybe I need to get help. I need to find out, how did these traumatic experiences affect me, in terms of who I am today. And so I got into therapy. And, this is something that a lot of men don't want to face, But I just want to say, um, when we as men have gone through abusive situations, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, we too, need to explore these things from a therapeutic standpoint. So I made the decision to seek therapy, and I understood, through college, what therapy could do for you. and it proved pivotal. And I would say today I'm probably living my best life. I feel better today than I felt as a child. I'll even go so far to say as I was probably depressed as a young kid. And I say that because I can think back to the friendships that I had and who I was in those friendships. And I'll just bring up one point. I met a gentleman a couple of years ago in a community, and he was someone that knew me as a kid in high school. And we struck up a conversation and we were talking back and forth, and he was just sitting there silent. And it kind of made me feel uncomfortable. I go, "Why are you not saying nothing?" He goes, "Because when I knew you in high school, you didn't have a word to say. You were just kind of somebody in the background. And now to see you, talking and us in this conversation, I'm thrown back." And that was a reminder to me that, yes, there was a lot going on with me as a kid. I didn't have the confidence, to um, be who I needed to be in any kind of situation. And again, that's why sports was so pivotal in, providing me with leadership skills that I didn't even have. Um, Going into law enforcement, providing me with leadership skills that I didn't even have. And, in thinking about those things, I feel like God did an awesome job of planning my life, because he put me in situations that I had to be accountable to, in terms of being a leader and becoming the person that I am today.
And you redefined your purpose in this new phase of your life. What does it look like now to live with that clarity, healing, and service?
Wow, that's a great question. I really honestly do just really feel so much better about who I am as a person and what direction I've gone and direction that I'm going. When I look back, on my past and the things that I've done in terms of bettering our communities, it makes me feel good. And I really truly feel like that should be all of our purpose. You know, Mine was dealing with youth who had made bad decisions. Um, it could, for somebody else, it could be a financial advisor. For somebody else, it could be a teacher, But we all have a responsibility to our community, in terms of helping, those who need help, those who, like Mr. Burnett. Mr. Burnett knew that I was somebody that needed help, and he reached, back and put me along. And I think we should all have a responsibility to reaching back and pulling others along, to help them on their journey.
Well, we're going to take one last short break. And when we come back, Ron reflects on the legacy he hopes to leave and also some final thoughts. Don't miss a thing. Follow Expressions of Leadership on your favorite podcast app and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at Expressions of Leadership. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and I've been speaking with Ron Jenkins, a man whose life has been shaped by adversity, transformation, and an unwavering commitment to helping others. As we head into our final segment, we're exploring purpose, impact, and the legacy he hopes to leave behind. What have you learned about connection through the act of sharing your story?
I say to people out there, if you have a story, it's no good sitting in a drawer in a closet. That story needs to be shared because I'm sure there's someone who's gone through something similar to you or someone who's going through something and they need to hear a story of redemption to give them the confidence to work through their situations as well. Um, I for a long time, my story was sitting on a shelf in a room with the door closed. And I didn't understand the value and the power that my story had in terms of me sharing it and allowing others to say, hey, if he did it, I can do it. There's a young man that I coached a couple of years ago, and now he does voiceovers and he's very good at it. I had a conversation with him. I called him up and I said, "Man, I'm so proud of you. I just heard you on TV." He goes, "Coach Jenkins," he goes, "After hearing your story, I could probably do anything I want to do." And I didn't know that, but I know that sharing my story, somebody is listening. It's giving somebody a perspective that they didn't have. And it's up to us to share our stories in respected places so that those people who need them can hear them and can understand, that there's a way out.
When you look at everything that you've experienced, from foster care to football and now to the lives that you're touching through your work, what do you hope your legacy will be?
Wow, that's a very good question. One of my mentors when I first became a counselor at Fresno Juvenile Hall, he would do a big group with the kids, and one of the questions he would ask is, and this takes me back to that, he would say, "What do you want your tombstone to say?" And this was really deep, for those kids, but this was the part of the group that you would get the most participation and you would get the most honest answers. It's all inside of us to be good, even when we're in bad. And these kids really embrace that question, and I'm going to embrace that question today, um, because, like I said, we all want, we want to do good. We want to be seen as someone who made a difference, whether it's in our families, in our communities. Um, I embrace that question because I want my life to mean something in terms of helping people. Um, I am a giver by nature, and um, I feel like it's our purpose here, to love and to be for to give for to provide forgiveness. And I just want to be someone who made a difference, who took a bad situation and persevered, and came out on the other end and took his story and gave it back to the community so that it would make a difference in other people's lives. That's my hope. My hope is that I've helped someone.
And you definitely have. Well, we like to close every episode with some wisdom and some whimsy. Let's start by sharing some wisdom. If someone listening feels weighed down by their past or unsure about their future, what's one piece of advice you'd want to offer them?
To seek trusted help. Find someone in their circle that they trust and go to them and talk to them. And if they don't have anyone that they trust, seek out therapy, through a trusted resource and seek out the help that they need to work through that situation. A lot of times, when we're bogged down by, our situations, we don't see clearly, and we just need someone else to remind us of the goodness in us. So I would say seek out someone in your circle who you trust, who you know will be honest with you. And if you don't have anyone in your circle, then seek out therapy through a community resource.
And now for the fun question. If you could have dinner with any athlete, living or gone, who would it be? And what would you ask them?
This is gonna throw you guys off, being that I'm a football guy, but I'm a huge Tiger Woods fan. And I would love to have dinner with Tiger Woods and just, asked him, what does it take to be great, in the game of golf? I'm an avid golfer, and it is probably one of the toughest things that I've ever tried to conquer in terms of a sport. Um, yes, Tiger Woods would be my guy.
Well, thank you, Ron, for walking us through your personal story here on Expressions of Leadership. Your journey is a compelling example of how personal transformation can fuel meaningful leadership. And it's a testament to what's possible when people invest in others.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, if Ron's story moved you, please share this episode. Let someone know that they're not alone and there's someone waiting to hear them. Until next time, lead with purpose, compassion, and courage. If you haven't done so already, make sure to click on that follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Have a guest you'd like us to interview? Questions, ideas, or just want to say hello? You can reach us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com or connect with us on Instagram or YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks to our amazing team behind the scenes for making this podcast possible, including our sound engineer, Graham Palmer, and my chief encourager and advisor, Jeremiah Higgins.